You find yourself drifting into a gentle summer night in England. The year is 1381. The air is warm but carries a faint breeze from the open fields, filled with the quiet perfume of rye, barley, and oats. You hear the distant murmur of crickets and the gentle creak of wooden beams inside a modest cottage. This is not a palace, nor a grand hall of nobles. It is the simple, thatched-roof dwelling of a peasant family in the county of Essex, a family whose life is tied, day after day, to the land, the seasons, and the burdens of duty owed to their lord. As you listen, you can almost hear the steady crackle of a small fire in the hearth. It glows softly against the rough stone, a steady companion in a world that offers few comforts. You notice the scent of smoke and baked bread mixing together, creating a sense of warmth and safety. This is their world, a world that does not rush. Each detail lingers, just as each sound lingers in your ears tonight. The year 1381 carries a special weight, even if the family here does not yet know how it will unfold. Across England, murmurs of discontent travel from village to village. The Crown has demanded yet another poll tax, each adult, no matter how poor, expected to pay the same amount. It is not the first such tax, and not the second. It is the third. And for those who till the soil, who mend the fences, who draw their bread from the very earth with their hands, this third demand feels impossible. You imagine the father of this house, his face browned by years under the sun, his hands calloused from ploughing. Tonight, he sits quietly by the fire, his gaze fixed on the flames. The mother stirs a pot of thin pottage, a mixture of grains and vegetables, stretching every scrap to fill the bowls of her children. The little ones lean against her side, lulled by the rhythm of the spoon, by the gentle hum she offers under her breath. The air is filled with stillness, but beneath that stillness lies tension. The people of the village have begun to whisper. In the fields, as scythes move through the tall stalks of wheat, one farmer leans close to another. They speak of men gathering, not far from here. They speak of marching, perhaps toward London itself. These whispers drift into the home, carried on the voices of neighbours and friends. And so, on this quiet summer evening, you are invited to step into their lives. You see the rough wooden table, smoothed by years of use. Its surface is bare, save for a loaf of coarse black bread. You see the rushes scattered on the floor, freshened with herbs to soften the smell of earth and sweat. You notice the flicker of light against the walls made not of stone but of wattle and daub, patched with care when rains threaten to seep in. Everything here speaks of effort, of survival, of making do with little. Yet, for all its simplicity, this home has its own beauty. The children's laughter earlier in the day still seems to echo faintly, and the warmth of the fire seems to embrace you as if you too belong here. Outside, the stars have begun to show, faint dots of light across the vast summer sky. Perhaps one of the children, still awake, points toward them, asking questions about heaven, about God, about whether life might someday be easier. And the parents, though weary, smile gently and answer in hushed tones. For even in hardship, they hold on to faith. Faith that tomorrow may be lighter. Faith that their children may know less suffering than themselves. This year, however, the burdens have pressed heavier than before. The harvest has been uncertain, the work unending. And then came the tax collector, with his demands and his ledgers, his ink-stained hands recording each coin received. To many, it feels as though the very breath has been stolen from their lungs. They give, and still it is not enough. You sense the heaviness of this moment, the pause before a storm. Yet you also sense the gentle rhythm of their lives, a rhythm that has carried on for generations. But tonight, in this home, there is still warmth. There is still family. There is still the quiet of the fields stretching beyond the horizon, fields that have fed them and their ancestors. Listen carefully now. You can almost hear the rhythm of the land itself, the soft sigh of the evening wind through the thatch, the muffled cluck of a chicken settling into the coop outside, the drip of water from a wooden pail, still cool from the well. Each sound is a lullaby, carrying you deeper into the world of 1381. And though history tells us that rebellion will soon rise, that crowds will gather, that the voices of peasants will echo all the way to London, tonight is not yet that moment. Tonight is still and calm and filled with anticipation. You are not asked to rush forward, but simply to sit in this cottage, to breathe the same air, to share the same firelight, and to feel the same mixture of fear and hope. So, let yourself sink into this quiet evening. Let the distant world slip away, until all that remains is the sound of the fire, the softness of the night, and the gentle presence of a family that, like you, longs for peace, fairness, and rest. Here, in the summer of 1381, you are safe. Here, you may close your eyes and listen as their story begins. You sit a little closer to the fire now, inside this peasant cottage. The flames do not leap high as they might in a noble's hall. They glow low and steady, fed with scraps of wood and brush gathered from the hedgerows. The hearth is not only the center of warmth, but the center of life. It is where food is prepared, where stories are shared, where prayers are whispered, and where children drift off to sleep with the comfort of its glow. You notice the way the smoke curls upward toward a hole in the thatched roof. Not a grand chimney, but a simple vent that lets the fire breathe. The smell of wood smoke clings to the walls and to the woolen tunics hung nearby. It clings to the hair of the family, and even to the straw mats where they will lay down to rest. It is the scent of survival, a constant presence, neither pleasant nor unpleasant, simply a reminder of the life they live. On the hearth sits a blackened iron pot. Inside, a mixture of grains, leeks, and perhaps a bit of cabbage simmers slowly. This humble dish, pottage, is the daily fare of the peasantry, sometimes thickened with peas or beans, sometimes flavored with herbs from the hedgerow. It rarely contains meat, for meat is precious and costly. Tonight, the pot carries only the simplest ingredients, yet it fills the room with a gentle aroma that comforts the stomach as well as the heart. Beside the pot rests a loaf of bread, dark and coarse, made from rye and barley. Its crust is thick, its taste slightly sour, yet it is filling. Bread has been baked earlier that day in the communal oven, where the village women take turns tending the fire and sliding loaves onto the hot stones. Each family marks its bread with a small cut or sign, so that when the loaves are removed, no one is confused. This loaf, rough and sturdy, carries the mark of this household. The mother tears the bread into pieces, placing them into wooden bowls. She ladles the warm pottage over the bread, letting it soften in the broth. The children, their eyes heavy with sleep, reach eagerly for their portions. They do not complain about the simplicity, for this is the taste of home. Each bite reminds them of safety, of their mother's hands, of the daily rhythm that, no matter how harsh the world outside, still continues inside these walls. You feel the warmth of the bowls as they are set before you. Dip a piece of bread into the broth, letting it soak before you taste. The flavor is modest, yet soothing. You chew slowly, aware of every grain, every hint of herb. It is food not meant to excite, but to sustain, to carry the body through long days in the fields. The fire crackles softly, and the only other sound is the faint hum of the mother's voice as she sings to the youngest child. It is not a grand song, but a lullaby born of habit, its words simple, repeating like a prayer. You feel your own breathing slow as you listen, the rhythm of the song weaving with the rhythm of the flames. The father sits silently, his bowl in his hands. His mind is busy, though he does not speak. He has worked all day, perhaps repairing a hedge or tilling a strip of land, and his body aches. Yet more than that, his thoughts weigh heavy. He wonders how many more coins will be demanded, how much longer his family can endure. Still, he does not voice this aloud. He looks at his children, and he chooses silence, for tonight he wants them to sleep in peace. The walls of the cottage glow faintly in the firelight. Shadows shift and stretch, creating shapes that flicker across the room. To the children, these shapes are like gentle spirits, familiar companions that appear each night. They giggle softly, pointing at the shadows, inventing stories. The parents smile faintly, remembering their own childhood games, when they too imagined that the shadows were friendly creatures who guarded them through the night. Outside, the world is quiet. The fields rest under the pale light of the moon, the furrows dark and cool. Beyond the hedges, owls call softly to one another, and the sound carries across the still air. Yet here, within the walls of this home, the family is enclosed in a small circle of warmth and light. The hearth is their anchor, their shield against the uncertainty beyond. You let yourself relax into this moment, allowing the fire's warmth to seep into your own bones. You imagine the roughness of the wooden bench beneath you, the comforting heaviness of the bread in your hand, the slow satisfaction of the pottage filling your stomach. These sensations are grounding, steady, timeless. They remind you that for all the centuries that have passed, for all the changes the world has seen, The simple act of breaking bread by fire has always been, and will always be, a moment of comfort. The father rises and places another small log onto the fire. Sparks leap briefly, then settle into the embers. The glow deepens, casting the room in a softer, more golden light. The children lean closer to their mother now, their eyelids heavy, their bodies surrendering to the pull of sleep. She strokes their hair gently, whispering words only they can hear, words of reassurance, of blessing, of love. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the rhythm of their evening become the rhythm of your own breathing. The crackle, the whisper, the sigh all merge into a lullaby. And you realize that in this small, humble cottage, in this fleeting slice of 1381, you have found not only history, but a sanctuary. Here, with the hearth glowing and the bread shared, you are safe. Here, you may rest. You settle deeper into the cottage as the family gathers close to the hearth. The fire glows low, its light painting the faces of those seated around it. It is their circle of comfort, a place where the day's labor is set aside and the bonds of family become visible, warm, and reassuring. The father sits on a sturdy wooden stool, his posture slightly bent from years of work in the fields. His hands rest on his knees, broad and worn, the skin lined with creases made permanent by earth and sun. You notice how his silence carries a certain weight, yet it is not cold. It is the silence of a man who has said much with his labor, who finds rest not in words but in presence. The mother sits nearby, her lap a safe haven for the youngest child. Her woolen kirtle is patched at the elbows, but her face shines with the soft light of care. She hums still, her voice blending with the crackle of the flames, creating a song that is not meant for an audience but for her children alone. Their hands, though always busy with spinning or mending, now rest gently, stroking the child's hair as though to weave peace into the night itself. The older child, curious and bright-eyed, leans forward toward the fire. In his hands he holds a simple wooden spoon, absent-mindedly tracing shapes in the air. His mind is filled with questions that he sometimes dares to whisper. Why must we work so much for the Lord? Why does the tax collector demand so many coins? Why do the nobles ride past without looking at us? And though the father answers sparingly, the child's wonder is endless. Tonight, the questions remain unspoken, replaced by the comfort of the firelight and the nearness of his parents. You glance around the room. The shadows stretch long against the walls, swaying as the fire shifts. The thatched roof above creaks softly, the summer breeze nudging through its cracks. The cottage is small, yet in this moment it feels like a vast universe, the fire at its center, the family stars orbiting its glow. The father clears his throat, and his deep voice breaks the stillness. He begins to tell a story, one from long ago, of how his own father once lived through the time of the great pestilence, when the plague swept through villages and left the fields empty. His voice is low and steady, almost a whisper, and as he speaks, the room leans into the sound. He tells of how the survivors carried on, of how they rebuilt their lives even when so many were gone. And in his story is a lesson, that endurance is woven into their blood, that survival is their inheritance. The mother listens quietly, nodding at his words. She knows the story, for she has heard it before, yet each telling feels new when spoken in the stillness of night. Her eyes meet his across the firelight, and in that brief glance lies trust, the kind of trust built through shared hardship, through seasons of scarcity and brief moments of joy. The children listen too. The youngest does not fully understand, yet clings to the rhythm of her father's voice. The eldest drinks in every word, storing it away like a treasure, for he knows these stories shape him, guiding him into the world he is still discovering. You feel the atmosphere shift, as though the story itself becomes another member of the family, sitting with them by the hearth. You realize that this is not merely a tale of hardship, but a kind of prayer, a reminder that no matter how heavy the burdens of the present, they belong to a people who have faced storms before. The fire pops suddenly, sending a small spark into the air. The children gasp softly, then giggle as the father leans forward, pushing the embers together to steady the flame. The laughter lingers in the air, mingling with the faint scent of smoke and bread. Even in times of uncertainty, there is joy, fragile but real, alive in the sound of children's voices. The mother reaches for a small clay cup, filled with water drawn from the well. She passes it to her son, who drinks eagerly, then hands it back with a smile. It is a simple act, yet in the quiet of the evening it feels almost ceremonial, an offering passed from hand to hand. a reminder that even the plainest gifts are sacred when shared. You lean back slightly, breathing in the rhythm of this moment. It is unhurried, timeless. You can imagine countless nights before this one, countless families gathered in similar circles, bound together by the same glow, the same shadows, the same hunger for rest and belonging. The world beyond may be filled with turmoil, but inside the cottage, the fire and family form a sanctuary untouched by lords or taxes or distant wars. The father's story fades into silence, and for a time no one speaks. The children yawn, the mother hums softly, the fire breathes with them. You realize that silence here is not empty, it is full, brimming with the presence of those you love, with the comfort of knowing you are not alone. As you watch, you feel yourself becoming part of this circle, your heartbeat slowing to match theirs, your mind quieting with theirs. You are no longer an observer of history, you are inside it, warmed by the same fire, comforted by the same bonds. The night deepens. Beyond the walls of the cottage, the stars shimmer more brightly, and the world grows stiller. Inside, the family prepares to drift into sleep, each member carrying the warmth of the hearth into their dreams. And you, too, are invited to carry that warmth, letting it calm you, letting it draw you deeper into rest. Here, around the fire, you are safe. Here, in the year 1381, you are surrounded by love, by story, by peace. You sit with the family as the fire dims, and the conversation drifts toward the burdens that press so heavily upon them. The warmth of the hearth remains, but in their voices you hear the quiet strain of lives shaped by endless work and relentless demands. The year 1381 is not gentle on those who till the soil. Each dawn begins before the sun rises, and each day stretches until long after dusk. For the peasants, labor is not a choice, it is survival. The soil must be ploughed, the fields seeded, the harvest gathered. If the crops fail, hunger follows. If the tools break, repairs must be made. Every season carries its duty, and every failure carries a cost. You can imagine the father's hands gripping the plough, his shoulders bent forward as the oxen strain against the earth. The ground is heavy with clay, and each furrow takes his strength. Behind him, the fields stretch endlessly, divided into strips, each belonging to a different family yet all bound by the authority of the Lord. These strips must be tended not only for themselves, but also for the manor, for it is the Lord's land that gives them the right to work their own. And then there are the dues, labor dues, rents, obligations. Several days each week may be claimed not for their own plots, but for the Lord's fields, the Lord's harvest, the Lord's livestock. You picture the men of the village walking in silence to the manor lands, their tools over their shoulders, their eyes fixed downward. They work as if the sweat on their brows belongs not to them, but to another. The family knows this rhythm well. The mother works as hard as the father, though in different ways. She tends the cottage garden, where herbs and onions push through the soil, and she manages the poultry, keeping chickens alive despite the predators that lurk near the hedgerows. She spins wool when the light allows, her spindle humming softly, thread winding like a lifeline around her fingers. She does all this while keeping the household together, baking bread, preparing pottage, teaching her children the skills they too will need to survive. Yet even with all this labor, there is the tax that comes not in the form of grain or wool, but in silver coins demanded by the crown. In 1380, it was the poll tax, 3 groats or 12 pennies, from every adult in the kingdom, regardless of how little they earned. It was not the first such tax. Twice before the collectors had come, and now they returned again, more insistent, more demanding. For a poor family, 12 pennies might mean selling a goat, or giving up seed meant for planting, or parting with the last of their savings tucked away for winter. You hear the heaviness in their voices as they recall the collector's visit. He came with parchment and ink, his tone firm and unbending. There was no appeal, no mercy. Each adult, the same sum. Whether lord or labourer, knight or widow, all must pay. The injustice of it presses into the air like a weight on the chest. For the nobleman, 12 pennies is but a fraction, hardly noticed. For the peasant, it is the difference between bread on the table or hunger in the cold months. The children do not fully understand the weight of these coins, but they feel it in the tension of their parents' voices, in the silences that follow when the subject is raised. They see it in the way their father's brow tightens, in the way their mother's hands pause in her work. Even without words, they learn what it means to carry burdens too heavy for their small home. You imagine the conversations whispered in the village fields, away from the ears of the steward or bailiff. Neighbors share their frustration in hushed tones. They compare what they have given, what they have lost. They wonder aloud whether the king, still only a boy of 14, truly understands their plight, or whether his counselors are blind to the suffering of common folk. Their words are cautious, but each whisper carries the seed of discontent. Still, life must go on. The father rises before dawn, walks the same path, grips the same plough. The mother rises too, kneading duff, fetching water, soothing her children. The fields demand attention no matter how heavy the tax, no matter how empty the purse. Yet under the surface, the weight grows heavier with each season. You let yourself breathe slowly as you listen, aware of how their burdens echo across time. You picture the feel of coins cold, unyielding, demanded again and again. You picture the rough soil beneath their nails, the sweat on their brows, the ache in their shoulders. You realize that their endurance is not only physical, but spiritual. It is the endurance of people who continue to live, to hope, to share bread even when the world takes more than it gives. The father shifts in his seat, glancing at the fire. They take and take, he mutters softly, his voice low enough that only his wife hears. She reaches for his hand, steadying him. "We still have one another," she whispers back. The words are simple, yet they hold the power of survival. For while the weight of taxes and labor presses on them from without, the strength of family holds them up from within. The children lean against their mother's side, lulled not only by her presence, but by the rhythm of her reassurance. The fire continues to glow, a steady reminder that even in the harshest conditions, warmth can be found. You breathe with them now. Inhale the scent of wood smoke, exhale the weight of worry. Inhale the rhythm of survival, exhale the ache of toil. Let the sound of their voices become a soft echo, fading into the quiet. The weight of taxes and labor may define their days, but in this moment, as the family gathers by the hearth, it cannot crush their spirit. They remain together. They remain human. And that, more than anything, is their strength. You rise with the dawn the following morning, though the fire in the hearth has barely cooled. The village stirs with life, each household moving to its rhythm, yet beneath the ordinary sounds lies something unusual, an undercurrent of whispers, faint but steady, weaving from one family to another. You step outside the cottage, feeling the cool dew clinging to the grass beneath your feet. The sky is pale, a gentle grey that will soon brighten into blue. Smoke curls from other cottages, a sign that bread is being baked, pots set to simmer. Chickens cluck and scratch in the dirt lanes, and the distant lowing of cattle drifts from the meadows. At first glance, everything seems as it has always been. The rhythm of the village remains. Yet as you listen closer, you notice the hush of voices, lowered in caution, careful not to carry too far. Men stand by the well, their backs bent slightly as though in ordinary talk, but their words are sharper, urgent. They say men are gathering near the Thames. One murmurs. From Kent, from Essex. They march north. The other glances over his shoulder before answering, and what of us? Do we not bleed the same, pay the same? Their voices drop even further, and though you cannot hear every word, you feel the weight of what they carry. As you walk further along the narrow lane, you hear more of these quiet exchanges. Women at the communal oven whisper while tending their loaves, hands busy, eyes alert. Another demand, they say, one sighs. Another tax, though the last emptied our purses. Another shakes her head. How long can this go on? Their children tug at their skirts, asking for bread, oblivious to the sharp edge in their mothers' voices. You notice how every corner of the village hums with these murmurs. At the smithy, the ringing of the hammer masks fragments of talk. No more Jews, they ride to London. The king must hear in the fields. Men pause at the furrows, leaning on their tools as if catching their breath, but their whispers stretch longer than their rest. There is a rhythm to these voices, like a hidden current beneath the visible surface of daily life. Outwardly, the peasants continue their tasks, ploughing, mending, baking, spinning, but inwardly they are holding something new, something dangerous and hopeful at once. You pause by the edge of a field, watching as the sunlight spreads across the land. The soil glistens faintly with dew, rows upon rows stretching into the distance. A group of villagers stand nearby, their oxen resting as they speak softly. You hear one man mention the name of John Ball, a preacher long imprisoned, who speaks of equality in God's eyes. When Adam delved and Eve span, he quotes under his breath, "Who was then the gentleman?" The others nod, though nervously, for such words can invite punishment if overheard by the wrong ears. Still, the seed is planted. The women of the village, too, carry these whispers. While gathering water or tending to children, they pass along fragments of news like threads woven into cloth. They march through Maidstone, one says. They freed the preacher. Another answers, they come nearer each day. Their voices rise and fall with care, sometimes fading into silence when others draw near, then resuming once the path clears. You sense the way the village itself seems to hold its breath. Each cottage, each lane, each furrowed field carries both the burden of labor and the weight of possibility. The peasants are cautious, for to speak openly against the lords or the crown is dangerous. The more they whisper, the more courage builds quietly, like embers glowing beneath ash. The children feel it, too, though they cannot name it. They chase each other through the lanes, their laughter ringing clear, but when they pause to rest, they hear their parents' lowered voices and notice the tension in their faces. They know something stirs beyond their games, something serious, and in their innocent way, they carry the whispers home again, repeating fragments they barely understand. As the day stretches onward, the whispers deepen into stories. Someone swears they saw a band of men moving together down the road, singing as they marched. Another tells of villagers refusing to pay the tax collectors, sending them away empty-handed. Someone else claims a steward's manor was burned, though whether this is truth or rumor no one knows. Each tale is retold with slight changes, growing with each voice, yet each carries the same essence. The people are stirring, the people are saying no. You imagine how these whispers feel to the father of the cottage you know. His heart tightens as he hears them, for he knows the risks. The Lord's men can punish harshly. To resist is to invite danger, perhaps even death. And yet, he feels the pull, the echo of his own frustrations given voice by others. He thinks of his children, their thin meals, their tired faces, and wonders if silence can protect them any longer. The mother, too, hears the whispers, though her concerns differ. She worries for her husband, for the risks he may take. She worries for her children, for the uncertainty such talk brings. Yet she also feels the stirrings of hope, the hope that someday, perhaps, her children will not live chained by taxes and labor beyond reason. She keeps her thoughts close, speaking only in gentle words, but her heart listens keenly to the murmurs around her. The village priest hears the talk as well. His sermons grow more careful, urging obedience yet betraying his own unease. He repeats scripture about patience and humility, but his eyes flicker when the name of John Ball is whispered in the churchyard. Even those sworn to guide the people cannot escape the tide of discontent. As twilight falls, the village gathers loosely in small groups, their tasks completed, their voices lower still. A man leans against a fence, telling others of rebels near Canterbury. A woman, holding her child, speaks of prayers for justice. The fireflies begin to glow in the hedges, their faint lights like sparks of the very conversations drifting through the air. The whispers grow softer as night deepens, yet they do not fade. They flow into the cottages, carried across thresholds, into the ears of children drifting to sleep, into the hearts of parents lying awake. The village becomes a vessel of secrets, each home holding fragments of the same story, fragments that together form something larger. You realize that what you are hearing is more than rumor. It is the sound of change beginning, not with shouts or banners, but with cautious voices in the dark. It is the sound of common folk discovering that their grievances are shared, their struggles not endured alone. In the hush of these whispers lies the fragile birth of rebellion, though no one dares yet to call it by that name. As you listen, you let the rhythm of these voices soothe you, for they are not harsh but hushed, not violent but vulnerable. They carry fear, yes, but also hope. They remind you that even in the quietest corners of history, change often begins with whispers. The fire in the cottages burns low, and the fields rest under the stars. The villagers close their doors, their whispers turning to dreams. And you, too, may let your thoughts drift with theirs, carried on the hush of voices that promise something new. Here, in the village of 1381, the whispers continue. Soft, steady, unstoppable. The whispers fade as night settles, and the family rests once more by the fire. The children lean against their mother, their eyes heavy, while the father gazes into the embers. In the stillness, memories rise, memories of days long past, of a world that seemed different, almost gentler. You, too, are carried into these recollections as though you are seated within their circle, listening not only to words, but to the sigh of history itself. The father speaks, softly, his voice low, meant only for those he loves. He recalls the years before the great pestilence, when the village was full of life. The lanes were crowded with voices, fields busy with workers, and laughter carried easily across the meadows. Each family had its share of hardship, yet the rhythm of the seasons felt balanced. There were more hands to share the labor, more neighbors to call upon, more children to fill the air with play. You picture it as he speaks. The cottages stood side by side, smoke rising from every roof. The churchyard rang with bells, summoning not a small gathering but a great host of villagers, kneeling shoulder to shoulder, their prayers rising as one. Weddings were celebrated with songs and dances that spilled late into the night. Festivals marked the turning of the year, when tables were spread with bread, cheese and ale. The mother adds her own memories, her voice threaded with both longing and calm. She recalls the markets where women carried baskets filled with eggs, butter, and herbs. She remembers the sound of minstrels who passed through, bringing music and tales from distant towns. She recalls, too, the days of her own childhood, when she ran through fields with friends who are no longer here. Her words are soft, but behind them lies the echo of absence. Then came the plague. It swept into the village like a silent storm, unseen yet unstoppable. The father recalls how one day the streets were full, and within weeks, they were nearly empty. Families locked their doors, prayers filled the air, and fear hung heavier than smoke. The mother bows her head, remembering how quickly neighbors vanished, faces she had known all her life, gone within days. Even the church bell rang so often it seemed to toll without pause, mourning one soul after another. You listen carefully, but the tone is not frantic. The years have softened these memories into something like a distant dream. The grief remains, yet it is wrapped now in quiet acceptance, like a scar that has healed though the mark remains. They do not speak of horror, but of loss remembered gently, as if recalling autumn leaves falling one by one until the branches stood bare. The children glance at their parents with wide eyes. They were born after the plague, and the world they know is already shaped by its shadow. They cannot imagine the crowded villages their parents describe. To them, the empty spaces between cottages, the fields left untended, the silence of missing voices, these are normal. Yet the stories remind them that once, life was different, fuller, richer with human presence. You can almost feel that difference yourself. Imagine the sound of harvests when many hands filled the fields, laughter mingling with the rhythm of sickles cutting grain. Picture the maypole rising in spring, ribbons bright against the sky, children dancing in circles while the elders watched with smiles. Envision the marketplaces where stalls bustled with chatter and the air smelled of spices, wool and fresh bread. These images linger like candlelight, faint but comforting. The father sighs, remembering how after the plague, the land seemed to cry out. So many fields lay empty, so many homes stood abandoned. Yet in that emptiness, something unexpected stirred. With fewer hands to work the soil, the value of labor grew. Men who once bent silently to their lords began to demand better terms. Wages rose, at least for a time. Hope flickered that life might become more fair. But as the years passed, the lords resisted. Laws were written to bind peasants back, to forbid them from seeking higher wages, to hold them in place as if nothing had changed. The weight of these laws pressed heavy, especially now, when new taxes came again and again. What had once seemed a chance for freedom turned into disappointment. The mother's voice, though gentle, carries a note of sadness. I remember when I thought the world might open, she says softly. We had fewer mouths to feed, more room to breathe. For a moment, it seemed as though the burden might lessen. But now she does not finish her sentence, but her eyes drift toward her children, and the meaning is clear. The promise of a better life slipped away, leaving them once more in struggle. The fire cracks gently, filling the silence. You breathe with them, feeling the quiet weight of their memories. And yet, within the sadness, there is also strength. They survived. They carried on through the pestilence, through grief and fear, through years of rebuilding. The very fact that they sit here now, with children in their arms, is proof of endurance. The children ask small questions. Were the feasts really so big? Did everyone sing together? Their parents smile faintly, nodding. Yes, they say. Once, the village was alive with sound. Some day, perhaps, it will be again. These answers, though softened by time, plant seeds of hope. The past, even in sorrow, holds visions of what life could be. You let yourself sink into these stories, not with fear, but with calm reflection. The plague is long past, its sharp edges dulled by memory. What remains is the reminder that life continues, that even in the darkest seasons, people find a way to endure, to rebuild, to pass on stories that keep hope alive. The night deepens. Outside, the stars gleam in silence, indifferent yet constant. Inside the cottage, the family's voices fade into murmurs, their memories blending with the soft crackle of embers. You feel the weight of centuries settle gently around you, not as a burden, but as a quilt woven of endurance and love. Here, in their recollections, you find not terror, but tenderness. You see that history is not only battles and lords and taxes, but also memories whispered at night, carried from parent to child, holding fast to the belief that tomorrow, too, can be lived. You close your eyes a little, letting these stories drift over you like a lullaby. The plague is gone, the memories remain, and through them, the strength of human hearts is revealed. Here, before the fire, surrounded by voices of the past, you are safe. You may rest. The fire glows steadily, its warmth spreading softly across the room. The children, drowsy but still awake, lean close to their parents. The day has been long and tomorrow will bring its own labor, but tonight is a moment for quiet lessons, spoken in low tones that linger like gentle echoes. The father sits forward, his elbows resting on his knees, his hands clasped together. His gaze is fixed on the embers, yet his words are meant for the boy at his side. His voice is calm, measured, carrying the rhythm of a man who has thought long and deeply, though he speaks simply, so that even a child can understand. You see, son, he begins softly, the land is both our gift and our burden. It feeds us, but it is never fully ours. We work the strips in the fields, but the Lord decides how much we must give. We sow the seeds, but we must still surrender a share of the harvest. It is as though we borrow our bread from the earth and pay it back in coins and labor. The boy listens, his eyes wide, his small hand resting against his father's sleeve. He has worked the fields in little ways, picking stones from furrows, chasing birds away from seeds, but he has not yet felt the weight of the plow or the ache in his shoulders. To him, his father's words are like glimpses of a future that awaits, a road he will one day walk. The father continues. There are men above us who believe they were born to rule, and men like us who were born to serve. That is what they say. But I want you to remember this. When Adam dug the soil and Eve spun the thread, there were no lords, no masters, only work, and the life that came from it. Never forget that, son. We are no less human than those who ride past us on horseback. The boy nods, slowly, absorbing the words. He does not fully grasp their weight, but he feels their power. His father's voice is not bitter, but steady, carrying a dignity that rises above complaint. The mother watches in silence, her face softened by the firelight. She has heard these words before, spoken in whispers, shared in fragments when neighbors gathered. But to hear them here, in their own home, directed toward their child, gives them new life. It is as though the father is planting seeds not in the soil outside, but in the soul of his son. You watch the father's hands as he speaks. They are rough, scarred, proof of years of labor. He holds them out, palms upward, showing the boy. These hands, he says, are my proof. They are worn, yes, but they are strong. They make the earth give food. They build the fences. They mend the tools. No parchment, no coin, no sword can do what these hands can do. One day, your hands will carry the same strength. The boy places his smaller hand into his father's palm, and the contrast is striking, smooth against calloused, small against broad. The father smiles faintly. One day, he murmurs, these hands will grow, and you will carry the work. But never let anyone make you believe they are worth less than another man's. The soil does not ask whether you are lord or peasant. It only answers to care. The daughter stirs at her mother's side, lifting her head to listen. Though younger, She too wants to hear the lesson. The father's eyes soften as he turns to her. "And you, little one," he says gently, "you may not take the plough, but you will carry your own strength. Your hands will spin, mend, bake, comfort. That work is no less sacred. The home is as important as the field. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise." The mother's smile deepens. She strokes her daughter's hair, affirming the words, "In this small cottage, where roles are dictated by survival, there is still dignity for every task, every hand that contributes." The boy, thoughtful, asks a question. "Why do the lords take from us, Father? Why must we give so much?" His voice trembles with the innocence of youth, uncertain whether such questions should be spoken aloud. The father sighs, leaning back slightly. His eyes meet his son's, steady and unflinching. "Because they can," he says simply. "Because the world is made in a way that favors them. But remember this, son, the world was not always so, and it may not always remain so. Change begins when people remember who they are." The boy frowns, pondering. His father places a hand on his shoulder. "Do not carry anger, child. Anger burns too hot, and it can consume you. Carry patience and wisdom and courage. One day, you may need them more than you know." The room grows quiet again, the weight of the words settling like a blanket. The fire crackles softly, sparks rising into the dim air. The children lean into their parents, warmed not only by the hearth but by the lessons spoken tonight. You feel the gentleness of this teaching. It is not a fiery call, not a demand for revolt. It is a father's gift to his child, dignity, perspective, the reminder that worth is not measured by titles or taxes, but by the labor of hands and the strength of hearts. The mother adds her voice, her tone calm and sure. "Remember, children," she says softly, "the Lord's hall may stand taller than our cottage, his robes may shine brighter than our tunics, but at night he too must sleep, he too must eat, he too must breathe. We are all made of the same earth, and it is the earth that will remember us." The children nod, their eyes heavy with both thought and sleep. The lessons sink deep, not in shouts, but in whispers, just as seeds sink into the soil before they sprout. You let these words wash over you as though they were meant for you as well. You, too, are reminded that the worth of a person is not in wealth or power, but in the quiet strength of living, working, and loving. The father's lesson becomes your own, a truth carried across centuries, from a cottage in 1381 into your heart tonight. The fire grows lower, the embers glowing red and gold. The family drifts closer together, their bodies curled in rest, their spirits bound by love and by the lessons shared. Outside, the village whispers still, but inside this home, peace holds sway. You breathe deeply, slowly. Inhale the calm of the hearth. Exhale the weight of burdens. Inhale the strength of simple truth. Exhale the noise of the world. Let the Father's words become a lullaby, steady and sure, guiding you toward rest. Here, in the cottage of 1381, you are safe. Here, with the lessons of dignity and worth, you may rest. The fire burns low, glowing like the heart of the cottage. The family sits quietly, their bodies tired from the day, but their minds not yet ready for sleep. It is the moment when prayer rises, when hope and fear mingle in whispered words, lifted gently toward heaven. You lean closer with them, sharing the hush of this sacred time. The father reaches for a small wooden cross that hangs by the hearth. Its surface is rough, carved years ago by hands that sought comfort in its shape. He places it carefully on the table, its shadow stretching long in the dim light. The mother sets a simple clay candle beside it, the wick trembling as she lights it. The flame flickers, soft and golden, pushing the darkness back only a little, yet enough to make the room feel alive with warmth. The children watch with solemn eyes. They know this ritual well. Each evening, after work is done and bread has been eaten, the family gathers to pray. The words are familiar, sometimes spoken in Latin phrases learned from the priest, sometimes whispered in plain speech, simple and sincere. The prayers are not grand but heartfelt, for protection, for strength, for mercy. The father bows his head, his voice deep and steady. Lord, grant us rest tonight and courage for tomorrow. Watch over this house, keep it from harm. Remember those who labor and ease their burden. His words are slow, each syllable carrying the weight of years of hope. The mother follows, her voice softer, almost like a lullaby. Bless our children. Keep them safe. Guide their steps. Keep their hearts gentle. Grant that they may know peace, even in days of struggle. Her words linger, wrapping the children like a blanket. The boy and girl add their own short prayers, shy and stumbling, but earnest. One thanks God for the bread on the table, the other for the warmth of the fire. Their voices are high and fragile, yet in them lies the purity of faith unclouded by worry. You close your eyes as the prayers continue, letting the rhythm carry you. The flicker of the candle, the crackle of the fire, the cadence of whispered words, they weave together like threads in a tapestry, creating a space of stillness, a haven within the walls of the cottage. Outside, the night deepens. The stars shine cold and distant, yet the candle and hearth hold their own gentle glow, enough to remind the family that even in darkness, light endures. Villagers across the lane are likely praying too, their own candles burning, their own whispers rising. In this way, the entire community seems bound together, each home a small point of light in the vast sea of night. The father reaches for a worn piece of parchment kept, carefully wrapped in cloth. On it is a short prayer copied long ago by the village priest. He unfolds it gently, as though afraid the fragile fibers might tear. By the trembling candlelight, he reads the words aloud. His Latin is rough, the syllables heavy on his tongue, but he speaks with reverence. The children listen, eyes wide, hearing a language they do not fully understand yet, feeling its solemn beauty. When he finishes, the mother leads them in a hymn, a simple chant she learned as a girl. The notes are few, rising and falling like waves, easy for even the children to follow. Their voices blend softly, not polished like a choir, but sincere, carrying the melody into the stillness of the night. You feel the hymn settling deep inside you, calming your breath, slowing your thoughts, guiding you toward rest. After the song fades, silence returns. The candle burns steadily, its flame swaying gently with each draft of air through the roof. Shadows move across the walls, bending and swaying like silent figures keeping watch. The family sits quietly, each lost in thought, each carrying unspoken hopes. The father thinks of the whispers in the village, of the marchers gathering, of the possibility of change. He prays for wisdom, for guidance, unsure whether to join or to remain. The mother thinks of her children, her heart tight with both love and worry. She prays for their safety, for their futures, for a world gentler than the one she knows. The children, sleepy now, think of simpler things, the taste of bread, the warmth of the fire, the sound of their parents' voices. Their prayers are small but pure, like flowers blooming at the edge of a field. You sit with them, sharing the stillness. You breathe in the scent of beeswax from the candle, mixed with wood smoke and the faint fragrance of herbs drying above the hearth. Each breath steadies you, quiets you, brings you into harmony with the moment. The candle burns lower, its pool of wax spreading slowly. The mother pinches the wick between damp fingers, extinguishing it with care. A thin ribbon of smoke rises, curling upward like a final prayer. The cross remains on the table, catching the last glow of the fire. The family settles onto their straw mats, pulling woolen blankets over their shoulders. The father lies nearest the door, a silent guard. The mother curls around the children, her arms encircling them. The fire fades into embers, casting the room in a deep red glow. Outside, the village is quiet. No whispers carry now, only the sound of night, the hoot of an owl, the rustle of leaves, the sigh of the wind across the fields. Yet inside this cottage, peace holds. Prayers have done their work, wrapping the family in a sense of safety. You let yourself drift with them, feeling your breath slow, your body soften. The prayers become your prayers, the candlelight your light, the peace your peace. Here, in the cottage of 1381, you are safe. Here, beneath the watch of stars and the quiet presence of faith, you may rest. The cottage rests in stillness, yet the night is not finished. After the prayers have been whispered and the candle extinguished, the mother lingers near the hearth. The others drift towards sleep, their breathing slow and even, but she remains awake a little longer. You notice how her presence fills the room, not with noise, but with a quiet strength that holds the family together. Her woolen kirtle is simple, patched in many places, but she wears it with a dignity that no patch can hide. Her hands, though small, are calloused from spinning thread, kneading duff, and tending the garden. These hands bear the memory of uncounted tasks, stirring pots, lifting buckets, mending tears, soothing fevered brows. She does not boast of this work. It is simply what must be done. Yet the rhythm of her care is as steady as the tolling of the church bell, shaping the life of the household as surely as the sun shapes the fields. She moves quietly about the room, gathering small things, folding a cloth, smoothing the straw bedding, checking the embers to be sure they will last until dawn. Each movement is gentle, precise, born not from duty alone but from love. You realize that her strength is not the strength of muscle, though she has plenty. It is the strength of constancy, of presence, of carrying on without recognition. The father may plough the fields, his labor visible in the furrows that stretch across the land, but the mother ploughs a different field, the daily lives of her children. She sows patience and reaps comfort. She weeds away fear and tends the fragile shoots of hope. Her harvest is measured not in grain but in the steady heartbeat of her family's survival. The children know this, even if they cannot yet say it. When they wake at night from a bad dream, it is their mother's arms that gather them in. When they stumble in the yard and scrape their knees, it is her voice that soothes. When hunger gnaws and food is scarce, it is her hands that stretch what little they have into enough. To them, she is as constant as the fire, always burning quietly in the background, warming them, guiding them, giving them light. You picture her childhood, years ago, when she was the daughter of another peasant household. She too grew up in a cottage of wattle and daub, learning the same skills she now teaches her own children. She remembers her mother's songs, the rhythm of her spindle, the warmth of her bread. Those lessons, passed down in whispers and gestures, live on in her hands. She is the living memory of generations, the thread connecting past to present. As she sits near the fire, she thinks of the future. She worries, yes, for she has seen how fragile life can be. She knows how quickly illness can steal a child, how easily famine can strip a family of strength. She feels the weight of the taxes, the demands of the Lord, the whispers of rebellion. Yet even as these thoughts trouble her, she resolves to keep her children steady, to shield them as best she can. Her strength is not loud, not forceful. It is the strength of someone who endures, who bends like a reed in the wind, but does not break. You listen to her hum softly, almost unconsciously, as she tidies the room. The tune is old, perhaps one she learned as a girl, perhaps one passed down even further back. Its melody is simple, rising and falling like the breath of the earth. The sound soothes you, just as it soothes her children in their sleep. It carries with it the calm of centuries of women who hummed the same notes in cottages like this, across villages and across time. She glances at her children, curled close under their woolen blankets, and smiles faintly. The boy's brow is furrowed even in sleep, as though he is already wrestling with the weight of his father's lessons. The girl's face is softer, peaceful, her dreams perhaps filled with ribbons, flowers, and play. The mother knows their futures will not be easy, yet she hopes to give them courage enough to face it, and tenderness enough to keep their hearts kind. The father stirs in his sleep, his arm shifting slightly as though to guard them even in dreams. She watches him for a moment, her expression gentle. She knows his burdens, knows the ache in his body and the worry in his mind. She cannot lift those burdens from him, but she can share them, lessen them, soften them with her presence. That, too, is her strength. You let yourself breathe in the rhythm of her movements, the quiet reassurance of her watch. She is like the steady flame of the hearth, never raging, never fading, always there. Her strength is not noticed in chronicles or recorded in parchment. History may not speak her name. Yet without her, the household would falter. Without her, the children would lack their anchor, the father his partner, the cottage its heart. The embers glow, the night deepens, and still she watches, humming, waiting, tending. It is an unspoken prayer, this vigil of hers, a promise that she will keep holding them all together as long as breath is in her body. You feel that strength wrap around you, too, as though she watches over not only her children but you as well. Her presence calms you, reminding you that even in a world of hardship, there is love that endures, love that labors silently but powerfully. At last, she lies down beside her children, drawing the woolen blanket over them all. Her eyes close, her breathing slows, and the cottage settles into complete rest. The fire glows faintly, the night holds steady, and peace settles like dew. You let yourself drift with them, carried by the quiet strength of a mother's love. It is steady, eternal, unbreakable. Here, in the cottage of 1381, you are safe. Here, under the watch of a mother's quiet strength, you may rest. The cottage has settled into silence. The father breathes evenly by the door, the children are curled close to their mother, and the fire glows faintly in the hearth. Its embers are soft red, pulsing like the heart of the home. You are drifting with them into rest, when suddenly, a sound breaks the stillness. It is a knock. Not loud, not forceful, but enough to stir the air, enough to send a shiver across the quiet room. A hand upon the wooden door, rapping twice, then pausing, then once again. The father stirs at once. He rises carefully, not with alarm, but with steady caution. In these villages, knocks at such an hour are rare and rarely trivial. Yet he does not rush. He steps quietly, his feet pressing against the strewn floor, his hand brushing the latch. He listens before he speaks. "Who comes?" he asks in a low voice. From the other side, a voice answers, hushed but urgent. It is the neighbor, a man from the next cottage. The tone carries both secrecy and weight. It is at eye. Open, if you will. There is news. The father glances back at his wife. She nods silently, her eyes calm though alert. The children stir faintly, sensing the change in the air, but remain in their blankets. The father lifts the latch, and the door creaks open. The neighbor steps in quickly, closing the door behind him. His cloak is worn, damp with night mist, his face lined with fatigue. Yet his eyes gleam with something more than wariness, something like fire hidden beneath caution. "They are gathering," he whispers. From Kent, from the villages nearby, men march toward London. They say, "The time has come." The words fall into the room like sparks, not bright enough to burn, but enough to stir embers. The father listens without reply, his face unreadable. The mother sits upright, her hand on the children's shoulders, steadying them. The neighbor continues, lowering his voice further. "The tax cannot be borne. The collectors have been driven off in some towns. They say even priests preach that God made all men equal. Tomorrow, bands will pass near here. We may join them, or remain, but the choice will not wait long." You feel the weight of silence after his words. It hangs heavy, pressing on the beams of the cottage, filling the small space. The fire pops softly, as though reminding them of its presence. The father finally speaks, his tone measured. "And if we march, what then?" The neighbor's shoulders lift and fall. They say we will be heard, that the king himself will meet us. The bonds will be broken, that freedom will be ours. His voice trembles with both hope and fear. The mother watches quietly, her gaze shifting between the men. She does not speak, yet her silence is full of meaning. She knows the danger. She knows that rebellion invites wrath. But she also knows the burden that has been carried too long. The father's eyes drop to his son, half awake, listening with wide eyes though he tries to appear asleep. He sees the boy's curiosity, his hunger for justice, though still wrapped in innocence. He glances at his daughter, her small body nestled against her mother, her face peaceful, unaware of the storm outside. His heart pulls in two directions at once, toward the duty to protect and toward the duty to act. The neighbor leans closer. "If we do nothing, the tax will come again and again. They will never stop. But if we stand together, perhaps the lords will see. Perhaps the king will hear." The father's jaw tightens. He knows the truth of these words. He has felt the weight of coin demanded again and again, heavier than his body could bear. He has seen neighbors broken by debt, children sent hungry to bed. Yet he also knows the risk, that what begins in hope may end in blood. The mother finally speaks, her voice soft, steady, like water flowing over stone. "Every man must choose for himself. But remember, whatever you do, you carry us with you." Her words are not a command, not a plea, but a reminder. She knows that his decision is not his alone, belongs to the family, to the children, to the generations that follow. The father nods slowly. He turns back to the neighbor. I will think on it. At dawn, we will see. The neighbor bows his head. At dawn, the road will not wait. He pulls his cloak tighter, lifts the latch, and slips back into the night. The door closes behind him, and once again the cottage is filled with silence. The father stands still for a long moment, his hand on the latch. The mother watches, her expression calm yet thoughtful. The children drift again into half, sleep, though the boy's mind races with the words he has overheard. The fire glows faintly, steady and constant. Outside, the village is quiet, yet beneath that quiet runs the same current that carried the neighbor to their door. Whispers in the lanes, footsteps in the fields, hearts beating with both fear and courage. You feel the tension in the air, yet it is not frightening. It is solemn, heavy with meaning. The knock at midnight has stirred something, not only in this cottage, but in your own thoughts. You realize that history often begins not with trumpets or banners, but with a knock, a whisper, a choice made in the quiet hours before dawn. The father returns to his place by the door. He does not sleep, but sits in silence, watching the embers, his thoughts deep as the night. The mother holds the children close, her strength a shield around them. The cottage breathes slowly, steadily, awaiting the dawn. And you, too, may rest with them. Let the sound of the midnight knock fade into memory. Let the whispers of choice drift into dreams. Let the glow of the embers guide your breath, slow, calm, steady. Here, in the cottage of 1381, you are safe. Here, though the world stirs outside, you may rest. The cottage lies in stillness again, yet the silence is different now. It is no longer the quiet of rest alone, but of waiting, of choices gathering like clouds in the night sky. The knock has faded, the neighbor has gone, yet his words remain, echoing in the beams of the cottage, echoing in the father's thoughts. The fire burns low, its embers glowing faintly, shadows long and wavering on the walls. The father sits by the door, his back straight, his eyes fixed on the faint red glow of the hearth. He does not sleep. His body is weary, but his mind is alert, circling the words he has heard, men gathering, freedom promised, the king to be met. You feel his thoughts as though they were your own. He turns them over and over, weighing the cost. If he stays, the taxes will come again, perhaps heavier still. His children will grow beneath the same burden, their lives no freer than his own. If he goes, there is risk of failure, of punishment, of never returning. His heart balances between fear and hope, each heavy in its own way. The mother does not speak, yet she senses his unrest. She lies with the children, her arms around them, her eyes half closed. She knows his silence well. She knows the furrow of his brow, the way his hand shifts against his knee. She does not need words to understand that he is caught between the safety of the present and the possibility of change. She tightens her embrace around the children, as though anchoring them against the tide of uncertainty. Her strength, quiet and steady, is her gift. She knows she cannot make his choice for him, but she can hold the family together no matter what the dawn brings. The boy stirs slightly in his sleep. Though his eyes remain closed, his mind still lingers on the whispers he overheard. He dreams of crowns marching, of banners raised, of voices lifted together. He dreams of his father standing among them, strong and unyielding. The dream is not frightening but strange, as though he glimpses a world he does not yet understand. The girl dreams differently. Her sleep is filled with gentler images, the warmth of bread, the comfort of her mother's arms, the glow of firelight. The heart is too young to carry the weight of rebellion, yet even her dreams carry the echo of her parents' voices, the softness of prayers, the reassurance of being loved. The night deepens. Beyond the walls of the cottage, the village lies hushed, yet alive with its own sleepless thoughts. In other cottages, fathers sit awake as well, mothers hold their children close, neighbors whisper in the dark. Each home carries the same burden, to remain or to rise. Together, their silence forms a chorus, unspoken yet shared. You let yourself breathe in this stillness. The air is cool, carrying the faint scent of dew seeping through the thatch. The sound of the fire is soft, like the breathing of the earth itself. Even in the heaviness of decision, there is peace in the rhythm of night. The father lowers his head into his hands, rubbing the weariness from his face. He whispers, not loud enough to wake his family, but enough for you to hear. Lord, guide me. Give me wisdom. His voice is low, cracked with fatigue, but steady. It is not the prayer of a man asking for an easy path, but of one asking for the strength to choose. He remembers his father's words, spoken years ago, that a man must endure, but also must know when endurance becomes chains. He remembers the faces of neighbors lost to hunger, the weight of coins demanded until none remained. He remembers, too, the laughter of his children, the warmth of their smiles. These memories, both bitter and sweet, weave together into the fabric of his choice. The mother opens her eyes, watching him quietly. She does not speak, but her gaze rests on him with trust. She knows that whatever he chooses, it will be for them. And she knows that her role will be to carry the family forward, whether the path leads through hardship or hope. The embers crackle softly, sparks glowing and fading. The father lifts his head, his eyes catching the faint light. He exhales slowly, as though releasing some of the weight, though not all. His decision is not yet spoken, but the dawn approaches, and with it, clarity will come. Outside, the first sounds of morning begin to stir. A cock crows in the distance, faint but clear. The air shifts slightly, cooler, fresher, as the night yields to the promise of day. The father rises, stretching his stiff limbs. He looks at his family once more, his wife, steady and strong, his children, safe in their dreams. He knows that whatever tomorrow holds, these are the treasures he must guard above all. He moves to the hearth, stirring the embers, coaxing them back to life. A faint flame flickers, then grows, filling the room with gentle light once more. The glow touches his face, revealing lines of weariness, but also resolve. His eyes no longer wander. They are fixed now, steady, ready for what dawn will bring. You feel his calm settle into the room, blending with the warmth of the fire, softening the edges of the night's tension. The weight of his decision remains, but it is no longer restless. It is steady, waiting to be carried into morning. The mother sits up, brushing the hair from her daughter's face. She meets her husband's gaze, and though no words are spoken, understanding passes between them. Whatever happens, they will walk it together. The children stir as the first light seeps through the cracks in the thatch. They do not yet know the choices their parents face, the burdens that weigh upon them. For now, they stretch, yawn, and smile sleepily, unaware of the turning of history outside their door. And you, too, may rest in this moment of stillness before dawn. The world outside may be uncertain, but here, in the cottage of 1381, the family remains whole. Their love is steady, their strength unbroken. The weight of decisions is real, but so is the peace of being together. Breathe with them now. Inhale the cool air of morning. Exhale the burdens of night. Inhale the glow of firelight. Exhale the worry of choices not yet spoken. Let the rhythm carry you into calm. Here, in the hush before dawn, you are safe. Here, with the family of 1381, you may rest. The first light of dawn stretches across the horizon, pale and cool, painting the fields with a silver sheen. The dew clings to every blade of grass, sparkling like tiny stars scattered upon the earth. The air is crisp, carrying the smell of damp soil and fresh hay. You feel it as though you stand there yourself, breathing deeply, letting the chill of morning steady your spirit. Inside the cottage, the family stirs. The father rises first, his body heavy from a night without rest, yet his eyes are awake, clear, filled with the weight of decision. He looks toward the window, where dawn seeps through the cracks in the thatch, and he knows the moment has come. The words of his neighbor echo still. They are gathering. The road will not wait. The mother awakens next, her hand resting on the children as though to shield them even in sleep. She studies her husband's face in the new light. She sees the lines etched by worry, the strength drawn from years of labor, the quiet resolve forming in his expression. She says nothing at first, but her gaze is steady, offering her trust as she always has. The children stir, blinking at the light, stretching beneath their woolen blankets. They are too young to understand fully what this morning holds. To them, it is another day, another bowl of bread and broth, another walk to the well, another game in the fields. Yet they sense a difference, for the air in the cottage feels charged, filled with quiet expectation. The father kneels by the hearth, coaxing the embers back into flame. The fire answers slowly, flaring into life, warming the room. He sets a small pot upon it, the last of yesterday's pottage, reheated for the morning meal. The scent rises, familiar and grounding. The children smile sleepily, rubbing their eyes, comforted by the routine. Beneath this ordinary rhythm, the father's heart beats differently. He knows the world, beyond their door, is stirring. Men are gathering in fields, sharpening their tools, raising their voices. They march not for war, but for justice, for the right to live without crushing burdens. The promise of freedom has taken root, and its call is difficult to ignore. He glances at his son, who watches him quietly. The boy's eyes are wide, full of questions left unspoken. The father sees himself in that gaze, the same hunger for fairness, the same longing for dignity. He places a hand gently on his son's shoulder. "Remember what I told you," he says softly. "Your worth is in your hands, in your work, in your heart. Never let anyone take that from you." The boy nods, holding the words close, though he cannot yet grasp their full meaning. The mother brings bowls of food to the table. She sits with the children, helping them eat, though her own appetite is small. She listens to the morning sounds, the call of roosters, the creak of cartwheels on distant roads, the faint murmur of neighbors beginning their day. She knows that beneath these sounds lies something deeper, the steady drumbeat of change, growing louder with each passing hour. When the meal is finished, the father stands and reaches for his cloak. His movements are slow, deliberate. He ties it around his shoulders, adjusts the simple belt at his waist. His tools, the scythe, the staff, lean against the wall, ordinary implements of fieldwork, yet in his hands they could become symbols of defiance. He looks at them, then back at his family. Mother rises, standing before him. She does not beg him to stay, nor urge him to go. Instead, she takes his hand, holding it firmly. "Whatever you choose," she says softly, "we will keep the hearth burning. We will keep the children safe. Go with care, if you must, and return to us." Her voice trembles slightly, but her eyes remain calm. She gives him strength, even as she risks losing him. The father nods, his throat too tight for words. He bends and kisses his daughter's forehead, then rests his hand on his son's head. "Look after them," he tells the boy, though he knows the child is still young. But the words are part of the lesson, teaching him that even small shoulders must one day carry great weight. He steps toward the door, pauses, then looks back once more. The image of his family by the hearth, the glow of the fire, the gentle faces of his wife and children, he holds it in his heart, an anchor against the uncertainty ahead. He lifts the latch. The door creaks open. Dawn floods in, cool and bright, bathing the cottage in light. For a moment, everything is still. Then he steps outside. The village is awake now, though not in its usual way. Small groups gather at the edges of the lanes, men whispering, women watching silently. Faces are solemn, eyes bright. Tools are carried not to the fields, but toward the road. You hear the murmur of voices blending into a low hum, like the sound of a river rising. The father joins them, his figure blending into the gathering. The neighbor nods at him, relief flashing in his eyes. More men arrive, each carrying the weight of his family's hopes. Together, they begin to move, their footsteps pressing into the dew-soaked earth, their voices low but resolute. Inside the cottage, the mother holds her children close. She stands by the door, watching until her husband's figure fades into the distance. Her heart aches, but her spirit does not break. She turns back to the hearth, feeding the fire, keeping its glow alive. In her hands lies her own promise of freedom, the freedom to nurture, to protect, to endure. You breathe with them, feeling both the heaviness and the hope of this dawn. It is not a dawn like any other. It carries the weight of generations, the promise of change, the uncertainty of what lies ahead. Yet it is also filled with light, with the steady rhythm of footsteps, with the quiet courage of ordinary people choosing to be heard. The fields shimmer with dew, the sky brightens with the rising sun, and the road stretches ahead. The father walks upon it, not alone, but as part of something larger, something greater. The promise of freedom calls, and though the path is uncertain, he follows it. And you, too, may carry that promise into your rest. Let the light of dawn calm you. Let the footsteps become a rhythm for your breath, steady and sure. Inhale hope, exhale fear. Inhale courage, exhale doubt. Here, in the dawn of 1381, you are safe. Here, carried by the promise of freedom, you may rest. The sun lifts slowly above the horizon, its first rays stretching across the meadows, painting the fields in shades of gold and pale green. A soft mist clings to the low ground, drifting like breath across the earth. The village is no longer hushed but stirring with new purpose. Men gather in small groups, their footsteps pressing into the damp soil, their voices a low hum, like a chant not yet fully sung. You see them clearly, fathers, sons, neighbors, and who only yesterday bent their backs over plows and carried water from the well. Today, their steps are different. They do not walk toward their strips of land, nor toward the manor fields, where the Lord's labor awaits. Instead, they move toward the open road, toward London, toward the promise of freedom carried in whispers and hope. The father walks among them, his cloak brushing his boots, his staff resting against his shoulder. His stride is steady, though his heart is heavy with thought. Each step feels both ordinary and extraordinary. He has walked this land all his life, yet never with this purpose. The road winds through fields heavy with dew. The barley sways gently in the breeze, its stalks catching the early light. Birds rise startled from the hedgerows, wheeling into the sky as the men pass. The sound of their wings blends with the rhythm of footsteps, creating a kind of music, oft repetitive, steady. Walk with them in your imagination, feeling the earth beneath your feet, the cool air on your skin. You hear the crunch of soil, the creak of leather shoes, the occasional cough or murmur. The march is not a clamor, not yet. It is a procession of resolve, moving slowly but firmly across the land. The men speak in low voices as they walk. Some share hopes. We will see the king. He will hear us. He must. Others share doubts, and if he does not, their words mingle with the sound of footsteps, not breaking the calm, but deepening it, like ripples spreading across water. The father listens, but speaks little. His thoughts drift between the fields he leaves behind and the faces of his children at the hearth. He feels the pull of both, duty to family, duty to justice, and walks with both weights upon his shoulders. Yet each step steadies him, as though the act of walking itself is its own prayer. The road rises slightly. The men pause to look back. The village lies behind them, small and quiet, smoke curling from its chimneys. Beyond it stretch the familiar strips of land, the cottages, the church spire. It is the world they know, the world they seek to protect, even as they risk it. The neighbor who came at midnight walks beside the father. His face is pale from lack of sleep, but his eyes burn with conviction. Do you feel it? He asks softly. The air is different today. The father nods. He does not need to explain. The difference is in every heart, in every step, in every breath of dawn. The march continues. Villagers from other hamlets join along the way. Some carry staffs, others sickles or flails, bulls of the field, now symbols of their cause. Their clothes are rough, patched, the garments of laborers, yet in their gathering they seem clothed with a dignity no finery could provide. Women stand at the edges of the road, children at their skirts, watching in silence. Some lift their hands in blessing, others wipe tears from their cheeks. They do not walk, but they give their presence, their prayers, their courage. Their eyes follow the men until they disappear into the mist. You notice how the fields themselves seem to lean toward the march, as if the earth bears witness. The wheat bends slightly in the breeze, the larks circle above, the river murmurs in the distance. Nature offers its quiet accompaniment, indifferent yet eternal, a reminder that life continues no matter the turning of history. The marchers begin to sing. It is not a polished song, but a chant, rising and falling with their steps. Some verses are prayers, others fragments of psalms. The words blend into the air, filling the morning with sound. It is not loud, not triumphant, but steady, like the rhythm of their footsteps, like the beating of their hearts. The father joins softly, his deep voice blending with the chorus. He feels strength in the sound, not his alone but shared, multiplied. He remembers the lessons he spoke to his son by the fire, that their worth lies not in the Lord's decree but in their own hands, their own work. And now, as voices rise around him, he feels that truth takes shape in the world. Hours pass, though the rhythm of the march makes time feel different. The sun climbs higher, the mist fades, the fields open wide under the brightening sky. The men stop briefly to drink from streams, to share bits of bread tucked into their cloaks, to rest their feet. Yet each pause is short, for the road calls, and London lies ahead. You watch as the father lifts his face to the sky. The light warms his skin, and for a moment, he closes his eyes. He does not know what the day will bring, but in this moment he feels alive, connected not only to his neighbours, but to something larger than himself. The march is more than protest. It is a prayer, a declaration, a step toward dignity. The neighbour walks at his side, smiling faintly. "Do you hear it?" he asks. Not just us, but others. Villagers ahead, already joining. The father nods. In the distance, faint at first, you hear it too, the sound of more footsteps, more voices, swelling like a tide. The marchers straighten their shoulders, their steps stronger now. The promise of freedom walks with them, invisible yet tangible, a presence felt in every breath of air. Inside the cottages they left behind, wives tend the fires, children chase chickens in the yard, mothers hush their little ones. Life continues as always, yet each family carries the same hope, the same fear, the same promise that perhaps the burdens will be lifted. You breathe deeply, letting the rhythm of the march become your own. Inhale with one step, exhale with the next. Inhale courage, exhale fear. Inhale hope, exhale doubt. The sound of footsteps, the sight of fields, the rise of song all lull you into calm, even as history unfolds. The road stretches ahead, long and uncertain. But in this moment, as dawn brightens into morning, the marchers move forward together. The promise of freedom is no longer a whisper in the night, it is a song on the wind, a rhythm in the earth, a hope carried by every step. You, too, may rest in that rhythm. Let the footsteps guide your breath, let the fields steady your heart, let the dawn remind you that even in uncertain times, light always returns. Here, in the morning of 1381, you are safe. Here, walking with the marchers through the fields, you may rest. The road stretches on, winding through the countryside, past hedgerows heavy with dew, past meadows where wildflowers bow in the breeze. The morning has become full day, the sun climbing steadily, warm against the backs of those who march. The sound of footsteps fills the air, steady and rhythmic, like the beating of a great heart. Yet beneath that steady rhythm lies another sound, quieter, softer, the mingling of hope and fear. You walk with them in spirit, listening to their voices. Some speak with excitement, their words carried like sparks in the wind. "We will see the king," one says, his face bright. "He is young, surely he will hear us, surely he will set things right." Another nods eagerly, adding, "He must see how unjust it is." We are his people too, but not all voices carry such certainty. A man near the rear murmurs, "And if he does not listen, what then?" His question hangs heavy in the air, unanswered. Another replies cautiously, "Then we must return to our fields and pray the Lords do not punish us." His tone is weary, as though he already bears the shadow of defeat. The march moves on, the words rising and fading like waves upon a shore. For each voice of hope, there is one of doubt. For each dream of freedom, a fear of chains tightened further. Together, these echoes weave a tapestry of human hearts, bright threads of courage entwined with darker threads of uncertainty. The father walks quietly, neither proclaiming nor denying. His face is steady, his eyes fixed ahead. He listens to every word, feeling them settle in his mind. Hope stirs within him when he hears the voices of those who believe in change, yet fear clutches him when others remind him of the power of lords, of the wrath of men in armor. His silence is not emptiness, it is the weight of both echoes, balanced within his heart. The neighbor at his side speaks more boldly. "Do not doubt. he says firmly. If we rise together, they cannot ignore us. We are many, they are few. His eyes gleam with conviction, his steps strong. Yet even he glances behind him now and then, as though wary of what might follow. His words are hopeful, but his body carries its own unease. You notice the faces of those who watch from the roadsides. Women stand with baskets in their arms, children clutching their skirts. Some smile faintly, lifting hands in quiet blessing. Others frown, worry etched in their brows. One woman whispers, "Go in peace, return in safety," as her husband disappears into the march. Another turns away quickly, tears slipping down her cheek, unable to watch him leave. The marchers see these faces, and the echoes grow louder inside them. For each smile, hope swells. For each tear, fear deepens. Yet still they walk, carried forward by something larger than themselves. The fields pass by, familiar yet strange. These are the same fields they have tilled for generations, yet today they are not workers bent over soil but travelers walking past it. The land does not change, but their relationship to it feels different. They are no longer merely bound to it, they are stepping beyond it, reaching toward something more. The father breathes deeply, inhaling the scent of damp earth, the sweetness of wildflowers, the faint tang of wood smoke from distant cottages. These are the scents of home, of survival, of endurance. He holds them close, for he does not know when he will breathe them again. The sun climbs higher. The marchers grow warm, their feet sore, their throats dry, yet they do not stop for long. Each pause is brief, a sip of water from a stream, a bite of bread from a pouch, then onward once more. The road ahead is long, and London waits. In the quiet moments, when the chatter fades and only footsteps remain, you feel the echoes most strongly. Hope whispers like a breeze through the hedges, lifting heads, straightening backs. Fear whispers like a shadow across the path, urging caution, tugging at hearts. Both are present, inseparable, part of every step. Let these echoes wash over you, not as clamor but as lullaby. Hope rises like a gentle hymn, fear descends like a solemn chant. Together, they create harmony, a song of humanity walking forward into the unknown. The father closes his eyes briefly as he walks, letting the rhythm steady him. He thinks of his wife's words the night before, "Whatever you do, you carry us with you." He feels her strength in those words, her quiet trust. He thinks of his children's faces, their innocence, their laughter. Hope lifts him, hope that he might win them a lighter burden. Fear pulls him, fear that he might not return at all. The neighbor notices his silence. "Do you regret coming?" he asks gently. The father opens his eyes, shakes his head. "No," he says simply, "but I cannot yet see the end." The neighbor nods, understanding. None of them can. The march continues through the fields, the sun now high, the shadows short. Villages pass in the distance, their bells tolling softly. Some peasants join the march, their faces resolute. Others remain, watching with folded arms. Not all are ready to risk, not all are ready to hope. Yet even their gazes add to the echoes, for every watcher feels the stirring, even if they do not step onto the road. As afternoon approaches, the men grow quieter. Fatigue settles in, yet determination keeps them moving. The echoes of hope and fear remain, not diminished but softened, like two voices blending into the hum of the earth itself. You breathe with them, your steps in rhythm with theirs. Inhale courage, exhale doubt. Inhale hope, exhale fear. Let the song of footsteps steady your heart. The road stretches on, the fields endless, the sky vast. London lies far ahead, its towers unseen, its fate unknown. But in this moment, the marchers walk together, carrying both hope and fear as companions. They do not know what the end will bring, yet they know they cannot turn back. And you, too, may rest in this truth, that life is always walked in echoes of hope and fear, and both are part of the journey. Let them lull you, let them steady you, let them carry you into calm. Here, in the March of 1381, you are safe. Here, surrounded by echoes of hope and fear, you may rest. The march continues on the distant roads, but here, in the quiet of memory, You return once more to the cottage. The fields lie behind, the whispers fade, and what remains is the heart of the story, the hearth, the glow, the place of safety. You step back inside the small home with its thatched roof and earthen floor. The embers still glow in the hearth, steady and warm, casting a soft red light upon the walls. The straw mats are spread out, the blankets drawn close. The family is gathered once more in your imagination, whole and safe, their faces peaceful in the gentle shimmer of firelight. The mother's arms still cradle her daughter. The father's steady hand still rests upon his son's shoulder. Their breathing is slow, their bodies at ease, their burdens, for this moment, set aside. The world outside may be uncertain, but here, inside these walls, calm endures. You sit beside the hearth and listen. The crackle of the embers is soft, like the faint whisper of rain on leaves. The cottage breathes with you, the timbers creaking gently, the roof sighing as the night air settles. Each sound is steady, familiar, safe. The memory of the march, of voices rising in hope and fear, drifts away now. You need not follow the road further. You need not carry the weight of decisions or the uncertainty of tomorrow. But tonight, you are invited simply to rest, to lay down burdens, to let your heart be soothed by the glow of the fire. The father's lessons linger, yet they are no longer heavy with duty. They soften into reminders that your worth lies in your hands, that dignity endures, that love holds a family together even in hardship. The mother's quiet strength remains, wrapping you like a blanket, steady and unbreakable. The children's innocence hums in the background, a melody of laughter and dreams. You breathe in slowly. The scent of wood smoke is faint but comforting. You exhale slowly, releasing tension from your shoulders. You breathe again, deeper now, filling your lungs with calm. Each breath carries you further from the weight of the day, further into the embrace of rest. Outside, the stars shine above the fields of 1381, eternal and indifferent, yet gentle in their constancy. They look down upon villages and cities, upon lords and peasants alike, upon those who march and those who wait. But here, in this cottage, the stars are only distant companions, silent guardians of the night. The candle has been extinguished, yet the glow of the embers remains, steady, pulsing, like the rhythm of a heartbeat. That glow is your guide now. Imagine it softening with each breath, dimming slowly, inviting you deeper into calm. The children drift into dreams, safe in their mother's arms. The father rests, his watchful eyes finally closing, his body surrendering to much-needed sleep. The cottage is quiet, a sanctuary of peace amid the turning of history. And you, too, are safe here. You need not march further. You need not decide anything tonight. You need only rest, as countless families have rested across centuries, finding comfort in the small glow of a fire, in the steady rhythm of breath, in the quiet strength of love. Let your body grow heavy now. Let your hands loosen, your jaw unclench, your eyes soften. Let the warmth of the hearth surround you, holding you in gentle embrace. Inhale slowly, feeling calm fill you. Exhale fully, letting go of worry. Inhale again, deep and steady, drawing in peace. Exhale once more, releasing the day. The embers fade into ash, but their warmth remains. The night deepens, the silence steadies, and the world drifts into sleep. Here, in the cottage of 1381, you are safe. Here, with the hearth's glow and the love of a family, you may rest. Here, history becomes a lullaby, and tomorrow can wait. Close your eyes now. The story is finished. The fire is low. Sleep is ready to receive you.